Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Does this seem loud? Is it loud? Can you hear me at the back? Oh. I cleaned my hearing aids the other day, so they good clean makes your hearing aids. Everything seems very loud. I thought there'd only be about 6 people here tonight because everybody, many comings and goings. It can be a bit different this evening because we don't usually read things. Well, I've never read things from this high seat. But I was meant to give a talk next week. And then on the 18th, I usually see my family about once a year at Christmas. And they're not a wild bunch, so it's not a kind of wild time. They're fairly conservative. So I see them over Christmas, just over Christmas. So I happened to mention somebody this old translation of a Zen thing, Hisin Min, which is Verses of the Faith Mind, which many people have most probably read. And usually when I do a 10-day retreat, I usually, instead of doing the parittas and at the end, because I'm not so good at that, I always recite the Verses of the Faith Mind, which takes about between 8 and 10 minutes. And as people know, and I know me, I'm very dyslexic, so I have reading difficulties and things like this at school. But this little booklet, I actually more or less learnt off by heart, so I feel quite confident at reading it. If the light lights up. Some people have heard it. I think most probably Sister Sundara, knowing Sister Sundara in the 1970s, mid-1970s, when the monks first came over, it suddenly came out then. You know, it was on a tape, and my Ramdas, and everybody really loved it. And everybody in the monastery, when the monks came over, everybody was trying to learn it. But they were trying to learn it off of the tape and from the little booklet. So even people like me from Luton was reciting verses from the Faith Mind with an American accent. You know, with a different American accent, and it was very popular. The translation, I think it goes on for about 10 minutes. You'll be getting excited. It's not that exciting, but there's different translations, and this translation's from back then, and actually the man who translated it he informed me later on that he'd done a better translation. It's a much more clearer translation, and I can't read it in Chinese. So you've got this kind of poetic form. And about a year or two ago, I said to one of the other senior monks who was around in at that same time, I said, you know, there's still, do you remember that Verses from the Faith Mind? And he said he went in his yarm and he produced a really tatty copy of the original one he had in 1976 or 8. Something, so he kept it that long. There are a couple of bits in it that from, if you're 100% Theravadan monk like me, not that I would know more than the third Zen patriarch, But there's certain elements of it, the way it's, the words used, there's certain elements which are 100% Theravadan monk might have a bit of an issue with, but it doesn't mean that that's wrong or he's wrong. It still captures the whole essence of an attitude of practice. And Lumpur gave a lovely talk. His last talk last week was so kind of rounded, and it always when you've been practicing a long time, it's not that you've got to some advanced stage or anything like that, but you tend to, your practice becomes very simple. So something when Lumpur talks, about being aware, awareness, or remaining aware, or the knower, or something like this, it's always kind of, you can attune to that. It doesn't mean you've realised anything, but you can attune to it. You do know what your awareness is, and you've obviously had some sort of, the awareness is broad enough and come forward enough, or you become aware of it enough that you see it's a kind of an impersonal kind of factor of yourself, which becomes an abiding. You can be with it all the while. So it's, when you give talks, we're always talking in the same terms about awareness. So it must get a little boring. It's different. Some people can analyse the suttas and wonderfully, and I've got no criticism of that. I think it's wonderful. I've heard some people who really know suttas brilliantly, and I heard a monk talk about for those who know, the Paticca Samuppada. And then he's taken an element of Paticca Samuppada, and he's gone out on an element of it and just spread out and painted this wonderful picture of concepts, from that, and then come back into the Paticca Samuppada, an element of it, and then gone out. And that's very, very wonderful. But I've got that sort of brain. I have actually got that sort of brain, but I haven't done the study. I'm showing off now, but I've got that sort of brain, but I haven't done the study to be able to do that kind of thing. So we're always pointing to, most of us are pointing, because in a monastery like this, you've got all these monks, a lot of you monks have been around a good few years now, and also got a good sense of what you're doing, your practice, so you don't really need someone talks all the while. A nun said to me a few years ago, I said, I was repeating the same stuff, and then she says, well, Bunty, we need our porridge every day. It's nice to have porridge every day, which was quite nice. It's quite complimentary. But also in a place like this, we get lots of new people who because they've usually come to Buddhism and got ideas from somewhere, have read things and different traditions, and become, can be quite confusing for people. So it's quite nice for them to have people put things in very simple terms, But still people have an image that, well, when I've been meditating as long as that person, it'll be different. I'd be an advanced person, but then the longer you go on, the more simpler it does become, because your questioning mind is sort of, you come to terms with your questioning mind. And these great scriptures, when I remember Lumpur Sumedho coming to Sri Lanka once and being in this place, and it was crowded. It was a room nearly as big as this, crowded with all people come to see him. And then this man gave this very intricate question. It wasn't quite Abhidhamma, but it was pretty complex Buddhist question. Lumpur just looked at him. And then Lumpur started talking about tuning into the sound of silence. He didn't give this man anything. He just went straight to directing people to how to bring the mind into the present and calming the mind, and getting a sense of being, getting a sense of your being. It's very hard to describe. Mind is very hard to describe. So you get these wonderful scriptures and Lumpur talks. Someone said to the kind of American guru Ramdas, he said, does it all change? Because someone asked me this kind of question today after the meal. Does it all change? Because I got a bit of a cranky, speedy personality. And I said, you don't get rid of your personality. You've still got your traits. And I think I might mention it in the last talk, but for people who hadn't heard it, then Ramdas said, well, he said, you know, when I was young, I had a flat and it was full of rubbish, you know, and it had the settee close, everything. It couldn't move. It was really cramped and all that. And he said, now I've got the same stuff, but I live in an aircraft hangar. And I thought that was a good description of, you know, how our mind comes if we persevere with this, if we keep at it year after year. Just reflecting doesn't mean you have to read. I was mentoring a monk. He's a very sweet person, but he disrobed in the end. But every time we go in the computer room, he was downloading talks. And he had hundreds of talks. And I said, how many talks does it take, you know, for you to actually start observing, start reflecting? And I don't mean reflecting, it's this thing reflecting in a kind of, in our world, it's very much thinking and analysing, and it doesn't mean you don't analyse, but reflecting, you know, as some more people would know, it's reflecting by just reflecting. Like when I look at you now, out here, I'm not thinking, I'm reflecting. An object of sight, eyes, consciousness, and then I'm just observing. And it's having the faith that is reflecting in my sense of what it means to me in one way. I don't have to think you. You know, I don't have to think I'm reflecting, I'm thinking of them looking at me and and anything to do with, or get doubt, is this going to work or anything like that. It's actually just staying with it. We say come back into the present, always coming back into the present. We're never out of the present. The past and future are things which appear here now. There is just the present. And then if we persevere with this just reflecting, and also very much taking into consideration our feelings and our body, when people first come to monasteries or first get interested in Buddhism, they sometimes come with, because people come into a place with issues, you know, by either being upset or we're confused about life, we don't know what life's about, many, many different things. And especially if we've come upset, we've had some unpleasant experiences in life or aware of unpleasantness, or we react very strongly to things, so we have an emotional. So these are things that have to be, when we first come into a monastery, this is for newer people, we have to bear with this, bear with these things. And the other thing is, if I can get rid of them, I mean, if you're real skilled in concentration, you can go into jhana, you could go into another dimension of reality, basically. When you come out, mind is bright, and that doesn't mean I'm a professional jhanist or anything like that. But there's moments in most meditators' thing where they've had the very clear mind, bright mind, which has lasted, the after effects last a long time. And you don't necessarily even have to have jhana to have this. So they're expecting, when can I get rid of all this crap that keeps coming up, or emotional stuff that keeps coming up? And I can get into the real meditating, you know, nice bright mind, which I can sit in for the rest of my life, you know. When in actual fact, it's all that stuff. That stuff can be in the body, can become emotional responses. They can become, you can put aside breathing and just go on feelings and emotion. You can be with an emotion. And just example, I'm waiting for someone to come from Germany. You know, I've been meditating over 40 years, and I'm waiting for someone to come from Germany for me, which my family ordered. It's nothing special. It's not a television or a really expensive computer or anything like that. But I keep sending a note. This is going to come tomorrow. We're coming in tomorrow. If you're having a bit of trouble, we're coming tomorrow. It's been coming into tomorrow every day. You know, not to me, but I know that's the thing. So one part of me suddenly I come in and sit and meditate in the evening, and so the first thing I think, why don't you just say they can't send it or something like that? So then, you know, and then you're left with not knowing, is it going to come? Isn't it going to come? You know, and you know, I know that's just crap. It's just the nonsense of the mind, you know. So, you see, normally if I was a younger person, yeah, I'd be thinking, well, do me anapanasati. Well, why don't it come? You know. But so I sat there the other day when it came out, and I just go straight to the feeling of that. Well, it is. I don't know whether it's going to come or not going to come. That can affect the whole body. But then if I just sit with that, that's reflecting. Then what happens, that has a magical effect on the mood. Because as the mind becomes balanced on the feeling, then the nature of that mood starts to change and shift and move. And then in a little while, I'm sitting there quite content. It's just that you've used the thing. It's not always going to happen like that. If you've had a real big upset, you know, it can come up in the night, and then, especially if you're a young person in a monastery, you sort of think, oh, I'm fed up, I've got to run away from this. You know, I can't cope with this. But you just bear with it, and these things start to wear down. We do what Ajahn Chah would say is the upayas, the skills. You know, so then the mind starts becoming big enough that you really become aware of the space in the mind. And I said to somebody after the meal, you know, I said, you could come into a room like this and you just notice all the monks and the columns and the thing and the Buddha and everything like that. But Ajahn Vimalo always used to use this thing of concept of space all the while, and I've had that. I'm not an Ajahn Vimalo, but they say it's one of the blessings of dyslexia is that you've got big spatial awareness. So I was always, when I was a kiddie and I could always draw, I was always drawing Egyptians in their chariots, and they'd be in deserts with space, lots of space, and I used to like painting little thin clouds in space. And but when this develops, when the mind develops more, you know, our attention develops, and we start letting go, a lot of this stuff gets dissolved away. You come into a room, and then you're with the room and the space and the columns and the people and the Buddha. And it's peaceful because your attention isn't getting stuck on all the things that are in there, the columns and as individual things, you know. But when we first come to meditation, there's actually a lot going on. So what I'm always trying to encourage is faith to carry on, you know. I hope I don't run away next week. He'll be going, what happened to that old monk when he ran away last week? He just about had enough, you know. So that's what we try to encourage all the while. In a simple thing like mindfulness or something like takes many things. It's as Long Paul says, and we all, you know, have this sense of it. You know, you can't put your finger on the mind. You start to have a place where the spaciousness which you can return to in yourself for peace. You can't put your finger on it. It's described as space or something like that. There's no preference. You know, you can't describe it in any way whatsoever. It just is, and it knows experience. As you experience, you become more and more aware of this. That's what we're working on. And in that, there comes some understanding. Then you can read a book, you can read a sutta or something, you know, in Buddhist, and then you know how that fits together and why that is. Like, you know what sila is, why sila works, what sila works. Because our mind is like a computer. It has to have the right input to get the results, good results, to have right mindfulness. A lot of people use the expression mindfulness, but there's a lot of wrong mindfulness. Real mindfulness is mirror-like. It reflects, but it's not a mirror which is in Kabbalah they use this expression, the center which has edges everywhere. It's a mirror that just reflects. I've described that sort of mind. When our mind reflects of the nature of things, if we get angry, we can get angry. But as soon as mindfulness is lifted or raises up on its own in its own time, then anger immediately starts to show its the reflectiveness of the mind, starts to show the characteristics of the anger, so the anger falls away. So that's why someone who's a fully enlightened person, there's no problem with anything, because everything is automatically revealed by the mind, by mindfulness. That's why I say Lumpur Dun says, discerning mind is the way. Is to have the faith to have that. I say that mind is like a mind. It's like if you'd get a mirror which reflects conditions. You have a mirror and then it reflects. Reflects your face, or if something goes in front of it, it reflects it. It reflects it, reflects it. But then what does a mirror reflect when it turns on itself? If we reflect on our own mind, that knowing mind, that's like a mirror that turns on itself. If you have another mirror, if you had two mirrors facing each other, and putting it that there is light, some light, what would reflect in the mirror? Could you say that the mirror, has the mirror got a surface? The mirror, you wouldn't see the surface of the mirror, because it's just reflecting the other surface of the other mirror. Lumpur said in his talk about being in the dark, going in a cupboard. And I had the same experience years ago of waking up in a very black room, really completely dark. And when I woke up, my mind was nice and still, and I suddenly thought, what knows the night? Awareness knows the night, knows the dark. So the mirror, the mind can reflect day, night, everything. It can reflect on everything. And I've heard cases of some people, not necessarily Buddhists, but who've got that kind of mind in some sort of spiritual, spiritually inclined, or just naturally good beings, high beings, who found themselves in the most horrific situations and been able to accept and reflect on them and found joy in the most horrific places. And other peoples have remembered them. I mean, I won't go into situations where it's occurred, the horrific situations where it's occurred. So that's what this reading is about. This is from the third Zen patriarch. And I say it's originally in Chinese. Most probably, perhaps Sister Sundra can recite it off by heart. She was back then when everybody had one of these little booklets. But it's a good expression of it. It's quite funny when you're going to give a talk, because people who've given talks know, you ponder, you think, what am I going to talk about? But it's always, for me, it's always not really difficult. I don't sit in my room worrying about it, because I know the nature of my mind, I'll forget about it. And even when I'm sitting before the talk, as long as I've got a starting point, I can go, That's why in retreats, I quite like if someone has a question, because if someone has a question, that triggers me, you see. That is a triggering. It's even in that to have a faith that something will come up. If we open up enough, then something will come out. Might be wise, might be stupid, but something can happen. A monk who's not a monk now, he said that he dreaded, I was sitting on this seat. This is for the young monks. And then time comes. He said he dreaded on this seat and then suddenly dropping into that place where there's nothing. can't think of anything, and suddenly everybody's looking, waiting for you, and you've dropped into this great hollow hole, completely self-conscious, you know. Oh, so that sounds quite a nice place, actually, to be there. So it's an encouragement to practice, Keep bringing our attention back to our, whether we want to call it mindfulness or self-awareness or just being. In England, there used to be many people were smokers, weren't they? I was a smoker at one time, years ago, many years ago now. And when I was young, my father used to smoke, and just looking at an ashtray used to revolt me, you know. And then, when I was a teenager, I had a girlfriend, and she smoked menthol cigarettes. These minty cigarettes. And I said, the only thing I don't like, and I had a sore throat, and she said, have one of my menthol cigarettes that cool your throat down. And I said, no, the only thing I don't like is that you smoke blooming cigarettes. And she said, go on, it'll cool your throat down. And I said, oh, go on then, give me one. I'll have a go. And I took on this menthol. Within 2 weeks, I was in normal cigarettes, 20 a day. And then it took me about 20 years to give up. You know, that's how strong the habit was. And then people come here, we see someone walking around our monastery with a cigarette, you say, look at them, why don't they give up smoking? Can't they give up smoking? But we're all addicted. We're psychologically addicted. Because our mind comes up with stuff, and this thought seems reasonable. It hooks onto. It takes the thing as real. It's an addiction, psychological addiction. So what we're doing is we're gradually learning to let go of the addiction. And you can see a packet of cigarettes, they can become meaningless in that kind of simile. Or the stuff comes up and it's simile-ish, you can sort of just throw it aside, you see it's meaningless. You know, not all the while. I'm talking from an idealistic point of view. Doesn't mean I walk around like this, just letting go of everything. Someone years ago said to Ajahn Vimalo, how do you let go? How do you let go? And he picks up a thing and he just went, you see? He said, there you go. Huh. So that's how you let go. And my favourite, I mentioned it on the last talk, I started starting off talks like it because I like it, is that I always, microphone. I like this thing of the fish, you know, and on the last one I go, body, feeling, perception, conception, consciousness. And this is the tension, is the sense of self. So what we're learning to go, so as we can contemplate feeling, body, perception, conception, consciousness. And you could do earth, air, fire, water. If you're 6 elements, consciousness, space. And then we're learning to go like this. And you say, oh, it's space. Spaciousness. I think the Buddha advised his son Rahula to contemplate space. Build up, I'm going to give his little talk, this recital now. I thought if I just read this straight off, it's only 10 minutes. I say I always just use that to get out of giving a talk. Where are the glasses? I said, Sister Sundar and I were talking this morning. I said, you know, people came at the mealtime. There was a young, I think he's here. There's a young lad sitting, another young lad came after the meal and he looked about 13. And I thought, how it's getting younger and younger. And Sister, she don't mind me talking like this, bringing her into it. We're a couple of oldies. She said, isn't it funny? She said, when you get to our age, you start noticing people keep dying who you know. So it's funny. Now I contemplated today, we got the younger ones coming up, the young are coming into the world, and we're getting ready to leave the world, you know. And the ones in the middle are the ones who are kind of settled, who haven't got to the point where they're saying, Christ, I've got to sort this place out before it's time to go. You know, so then when you get to our age, you start thinking how a lot of people, even when I think of this thing coming from Germany, which not turned in the post, I sort of think, how I might not have long to use it. I was contemplating, why am I thinking, when's this thing coming up? I might not have long to use it. A couple of weeks, I might be dead. You know, why am I? But then I sort of think, well, I wish they'd send it quicker. Then at least I can get a couple of years, bit of use out of it. I hope this is making sense, all this, some of this. I'm sure a bit of it is. Is it? You're all out of focus now. I said something after the meal. I said, we all have a different view of the world, of everything, just we sit in here. I said, you people sitting in front of me now, each one of you is looking at me from a slightly different angle. So just your view through your eyes is completely different. Venerable back there, Chitta Dhamma, he's seeing me up here, the back of Ajahn Vimalo's head. It's got a completely different view of the room and the sense of the people around. Each person sitting has got a completely different sense of being. And within each one of us a sense of being, we've got thoughts that come and go, we've got our personal history, we've got everything. We're all living in a completely different place. Completely. There's certain likenesses we've all got. And then you're all looking at me and you're looking, well, some of you are nodding off, but I remember listening to a talk. It was a very good talk by Ramdas many years ago called Seasons of Our Lives. And it was actually a beautiful talk. It was about in the 1970s. An excellent talk. And it was like psychology and religion, and it wrapped up. And it was so well-rounded talk. I can always remember it. And he said about the moment you become aware, self-aware of yourself. I disagree with a bit because he said, once you awaken to this, you can't fall back to sleep. But I think that you can recondition ignorance. You know, we say that our problem is ignorance, like in Paticca Samuppada, ignorance or not knowing. See, so what we're doing, we're looking when we reflect. If I sit here like this and take in all you lot, I'm reflecting through the eye. See? But then I can recondition not reflecting, keep looking away, go and reading a book. So, you know, it's like once you're awake, you won't fall back to sleep. But I remember in this talk on the tape, he's saying to a big audience, he said, once you're awake, you can't fall back to sleep. And then he goes, you can doze. In other words, some of the audience was nodding off in front of him. Anyway, this you have to listen. Can you hear me at the back? Can you hear me clearly? I'm going to speak in my best voice. If I haven't read this out loud for a while, so if I fumble a bit, my word blindness has cut in, and it's little teeny print, and I'm old. So I need a big magnifying glass. And I used to know it off by heart, but I don't know it now. So you have to bear with me. And just for the users who have not heard this, there's one person I know in this room that really wants to hear this, and he's going to be very attentive. And if I catch sight of him nodding halfway through, I'm going to tell him off after. So you've got to sit very quietly. And you haven't got to think whatever's written, whatever I read out, don't start thinking, well, I don't know whether that's true, or I wonder if that's true. Oh, I agree with that. And don't think about it, don't ponder it, just let it in. You've just got to let it in. I wanted to do a retreat where every evening I took a verse of this and then I sort of discussed it a bit. Or tried to discuss it. I'm not the third Zen patriarch. I'm not the second. I'm not the fifth. Anything like that. But the thing is, when I give 10-day retreats, even though people know I can talk the hind leg off of a donkey, on retreat, in the daytime, I demand silence, and even I'm silent. I actually love silence, believe it or not. What you laughing at? We're very old friends, myself and Yanarato, so he knows what I'm like. So in the retreats, I demand total silence, see, and then I thought about, oh, one time I do this with this. But in the evening, you see, there's always a bowl with questions in. So I've only got to have 2 questions in there, and I've got 2 hours talk. So I never get round to doing this. Now listen attentively, mindfully, open. Don't have any opinions about it. He'll mention this. Are you all sitting comfortably? The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against that which you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect like vast space, where nothing is lacking and nothing is in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglements of outer things nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve passivity, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way fail in both activity and passivity, assertion and denial. To deny the reality of things is to miss their reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop talking and thinking, and there is nothing you will not be able to know. To return to the root is to find the meaning, but to pursue appearances is to miss the source. At the moment of inner enlightenment, there is going beyond appearance and emptiness. The changes that appear to occur in the empty world we call real only because of our ignorance. Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can offend. And when a thing can no longer offend, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the old mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. As when the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Things are objects because of the subject, the mind. The mind subject is such because of things, object. Understand the relativity of these two and the basic reality, the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. To live in the great way is neither easy nor difficult, but those with limited views are fearful and irresolute. The faster they hurry, the slower they go, and clinging, attachment, cannot be limited. Even to be attached to the idea of enlightenment is to go astray. Just let things be in their own way, and there will be neither coming or going. Obey the nature of things, your own nature, and you will walk freely and undisturbed. When thought is in bondage, the truth is hidden, for everything is murky and unclear, and the burdensome practice of judging brings annoyance and weariness. What benefit can be derived from distinctions and separations? If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with true enlightenment. The wise man strives to know goals, but the foolish man fetters himself. There is one Dhamma, not many. Distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. To seek mind with the discriminating mind is the greatest of all mistakes. Rest and unrest derive from illusion. With enlightenment, there is no liking, no disliking. All dualities come from ignorant inference. They are like dreams or flowers in air, foolish to try to grasp them. Gain and loss, right and wrong, such thoughts must finally be abolished at once. If the eye never sleeps, all dreams will naturally cease. If the mind makes no discriminations, the 10,000 things are as they are, of single essence. To understand the mystery of this one essence is to be released from all entanglements. When all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. No comparisons or analyses are possible in this causeless, relationless state. Consider movement stationary and the stationary in motion. Both movement and rest disappear. When such dualities cease to exist, oneness itself cannot exist. To this ultimate finality, no law or description applies. For the unified mind, in accord with the way, all self-centered striving ceases. Doubts and irresolutions vanish, and life in true faith is possible. With a single stroke, we are freed from bondage. Nothing clings to us, and we hold to nothing. All is empty, clear, self-illuminating, with no exertion of the mind's power. Here thought, feeling, knowledge, and imagination are of no value. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor other than self. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just simply say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded. No matter when or where, enlightenment means entering this truth. And this truth is beyond extension or diminution in time or space. In it, a single thought is 10,000 years. Emptiness here, emptiness there, but the infinite universe stands always before your eyes. Infinitely large and infinitely small, no difference. For definitions have vanished and no boundaries are seen. So too with being and non-being. Don't waste time in doubts and arguments. They have nothing to do with this. One thing, all things move among and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. Words, words. The way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, and no today. Anyway.